was giving this talk, so I put this on the end to get the video right on it. Many of the things that I'm discussing in this talk have come about, and we're in a gradual process. So it's just as relevant. Everything's been refreshed. So who was here for the 2011 talk? Anyone? Well, okay. So the aim of this talk is to give people a quick introduction to precision time transfer. I've divided the topic, I've been greedy, I've divided the topic into 3 talks. Today's talk is a high-level introduction to GPS and time transfer. Second talk is the one I actually wanted to give, and it's on timing under Linux, specifically with Linux PPS. The third talk is about timing software and monitoring, so NTP, all this sort of stuff. So this is a standard disclaimer. This is particularly important for time things, because bad things can happen. So the focus of today's talk is GPS for time transfer, not consumer navigation. But a lot of the technical information is very much applicable to accurate and precise navigation. So the aim of today's talk is why you might need precision time synchronization, and B, how in Australia GPS is really your only option. So here's a précis of the talk. I'll start off by covering common timing needs, looking at the future of GPS and other systems, look at your options when choosing a GPS receiver and why you need a pulse per second. I'll quickly cover additional hardware along with connecting this together, and then I'll finish off by having a time traceable to UTC. So really the first part of this talk is convincing people that precision timing is important. Yeah, our expectations have changed. Time on Apple phones is only guaranteed to the nearest minute. On Microsoft platforms, due to the vagaries of leap seconds, time is only guaranteed to a couple of seconds. Some Android phones are off by 16 seconds due to a bug in the way they apply the leap seconds. So why is precision timekeeping important? Many modern regulatory frameworks require accurate and precise timekeeping as part of the audit and accounting functions. System administrators, if your logs are to be legally useful, they need to contain accurate timestamps. Then there are the vanity reasons. Timekeeping can be addictive. So in the modern world, expectations have increased. So to avoid litigation, I'm not going to give SLUG advice on how to satisfy legal requirements. But from an engineering perspective, it's often easiest to find the most stringent requirements and implement systems to achieve these goals. So here's a list of various things. As you can see, there's a huge variation in the requirements. So that's enough of the boring stuff of trying to convince people that precision timekeeping is important. So NTP is everywhere, from the clocks in our railway station to frequency transfer for radio transmissions. But with NTP over the internet, your precision is limited. So there are 2 main approaches for using NTP. The simple and most common approach is where your workstation periodically queries the time server and sets its local clock. The alternative, more accurate approach is to run NTP continuously and use internet queries to determine if the local clock is running fast or slow, and let ntpd compensate. An additional step on top of that is to use a local external clock, such as GPS. The key advantage of this is A, GPS is far more accurate, and B, you can use a GPS clock once a second rather than a couple of times an hour. So that's the long-winded stuff. Let's look at the helps if I can get the type right. Okay, so an external clock is an out-of-band method for time transfer. There are security and assurance advantages for an out-of-band method. Other methods, reasons why you need an external clock is for asymmetric network delays and coping with the extraordinary jitter on NTP connections on 3G internet. The remaining is about not depending on someone else's GPS server. Most Stratum 1s use GPS. So here's a list of all the possible direct time sources. Shortwave and longwave are not available in Australia. So in Australia, only real option is GPS. So that's a long-winded bit done. Let's look at the wonders of satellite navigation and how this will change in the next couple of years. So GPS provides the highest precision and it's now ridiculously cheap. $20, $30, your stuff. Okay, going back a couple of decades, people thought that the military was far better. In reality, you can have all the GPS, high precision GPS. It's all about cost. The military features, you can have the military features if you're prepared to pay. But like Moore's Law and multi-core CPUs, multi-constellation receivers have recently become affordable. So the most important advantage of the military system is cryptographic protection from spoof signals. But GPS signals are really weak. A simple jammer off eBay will overwhelm both signals. As a critical civilian service, it's no longer acceptable for the military to provide a deliberately inaccurate service. Selective availability is gone forever. Access to the formerly military-only L2 frequency has been introduced, along with the new L5 frequency. So what I'm trying to show this has been updated now. Since 2011, there have been 3 more satellites that replaced some of the 32 in the constellation. That means there are now 4 transmitting on L5 and 11 transmitting, or about a third of the constellation, transmitting L2C. There's still only a third of the constellation. That's not. You need 18 to get constant worldwide coverage. There's also very few receivers for these available. So this moves into geopolitical territory. Continuing over the next few years, there'll be increasing updates to the alternative to these alternative satellite navigation systems. GLONASS fell into disrepair after the breakup of the Soviet Union, but has been fully restored. The first 2 Galileo satellites have been launched, and the Chinese are going ahead with Compass. The Japanese quasi-zenith satellite system is a regional system. It's interesting to Australia because it also has good coverage of Australia. In the next few years, there'll be over 100 satellites in orbit. The problem with all of this is that receivers that support this alternative constellation and are affordable have only just come onto the market, and many only support one of the new systems. These receivers are A, not mature, and B, often poorly documented. For accurate synchronization, this is just not acceptable. For the moment, GPS L1 is king. Okay, let's get on to the technicalities of choosing the right GPS receiver. So you need 4 satellites to get a 3D fix. With 32 satellites in the constellation, you can only see half at one time. So why do we need 99 channel receivers? In a couple of years with Compass and GLONASS, yeah, that makes sense. But most receivers only can receive 1 constellation. Okay, so each tribe of GPS user has very different requirements. For navigation, it's the user interface that sells. For aviation, each receiver must undergo extensive certification before it can be installed. For land surveyors, they need the highest precision, so carrier phase tracking, dual frequency, multi-constellation receivers are used, and they cost about as much as a new car. Time receivers just need to be as bug-free as possible. So GPS is based on precise time. But you need to get that into your computer. For this, you need a pulse per second. The vast majority of consumer GPS receivers don't put out a pulse per second. Some of them that do are these Garmin models, and only these Garmin models. A newer arrival, so that's the Garmin. I'll pass it. That's right. It is ruggedized. The new one is a Shure Electronics kit. You can get it from on eBay, delivered directly from China. That one's has got a nice antenna. It doesn't let the rain in, etc. So they're spec for 1 microsecond. That one that I'm passing around. But often the receivers perform far better than on their spec sheets. But as you can see here, systematic errors are really affecting the precision that you can achieve. That's a sawtooth error. So, throwing around a GPS. Anyone know what that is? First person to throw up their hand gets a free GPS. What? Great. So this is the Grace Hopper analogy. Does that make any sense? Hey, we have a winner. So that's how far light can travel in 1 nanosecond. Light can travel in a vacuum for 300 meters for a microsecond. So that's a thing to remember. A GPS receiver that states that it's accurate to 1 microsecond. That's an awfully big difference for the. That's a big variation for mapping. So rather than repurposing a consumer navigation receiver, a better alternative is to use a receiver that's specifically designed for time transfer. These four have a long, all four have a long history. They're available. The first 3 are available on eBay for about $20 to $50. So another alternative is GPS-DO. In navigation, you can just sit in the same spot and average your results to get a more accurate result. Time doesn't stand still. So what a GPS-DO is, uses something like this to average the result, and you get a frequency standard out as a byproduct. So what this picture is showing here is on the left is a timing receiver. It's with an untemperature compensated surface mount oscillator. On the right is a ovenized crystal oscillator. Bigger is better. So if you're not accurate to the nearest nanosecond, you're not really trying. The other point was that I flicked past was that GPS-DOs are great for holdover. That's why their main use is. And basically it allows you to use this crystal rather than the crystal on your PC motherboard. So you've now decided, perhaps, on which GPS receiver you want, but is 1 GPS receiver enough? Sorry, please excuse the language on this slide. What I'm really trying to convey here is the fear of waking up one morning and discovering that your GPS receivers have turned into paperweights. Most GPS firmware is written in the cheapest possible fashion. It's difficult for the end user to test what will happen at a particular date. Basically, it's Y2K all over again. So if you're happy with one GPS receiver, at least check it against 2 to 3 internet servers. But if you need the high precision, then you need at least 3 GPS receivers. And NTP is Byzantine and can detect hardware failures. And hardware is cheap. So in navigation mode, when the GPS receiver moves, the interference may disappear. However, in static locations, interference can be forever, basically for winter if a tree grows. And NTP takes a long time to recover. So GPS is now an essential service. Most mobile phones base stations use GPS. Nations such as North Korea have done GPS jamming and have created outages in the base stations in South Korea. The impending effect of the solar maximum is a topic of active research. Okay, so this will cover hooking up your GPS and any modifications you might need to do. So most GPS receivers that have a pulse per second are TTL serial. Please remember that that your computer has a 24-volt swing on its serial port. This is easily enough to fry your average GPS receiver. However, on the receiving end, most modern PCs can cope with 3 volts. And RF connectors, they're like standards. There's so many to choose from. So if you want to keep it, distribution amplifiers are an alternative to NTP everywhere. That's a distribution amplifier. Allows you to keep the precision of GPS rather than using Ethernet. So let's start wrapping this up. This is both a reality check of how far you need to go, or you can go, and how you can soup things up. So it's an if, and it's a very big if, the time is accurate on your GPS receiver, then the pulse per second, even on a cheap consumer GPS, is unlikely to limit your precision. So as you can see here, the sources of errors from GPS are way below that of most computer timing. So if you need to prove that an event occurred at a particular time, you need your local time to track UTC, the internationally agreed legal time scale. There's no, as mentioned before, there is no real-time version of UTC, only versions for each country. In Australia, we need to demonstrate that our time is traceable to UTC Australia, which is managed by the National Measurements Institute of Australia. Yeah. So, GPS time, there's one little bug with GPS and leap seconds. The GPS timescale doesn't include leap seconds. It's based on UTC, but it's offset by 19 seconds, the start of when GPS started. So as such, it tracks TAI. In order to give the time relative to the GPS time, it needs to know the leap second offset. This takes 12.5 minutes to receive, assuming you've got good reception. In order to speed this up, a lot of firmware designers take shortcuts. And so there are many examples of GPS receivers either not applying leap seconds or applying them too early. So aside from the integer differences between for GPS timescale and UTC. The GPS timescale is not UTC. It's controlled to converge with the US Naval Observatory's version of UTC. The true UTC is produced retrospectively. Number one thing is that the differences are only at typically at nanosecond levels, and computers count in milliseconds or microseconds. So that's the end of the talk. Basically, I'm going to riff on now about how bad leap seconds are. So before the last talk, there was the meeting, the 2012 meeting, that was to abolish leap seconds. Leap sec was occurring. Real geopolitical problem. The real problem is that the number of leap second insertions is only going to increase over time. The Earth is slowing down. The number of times per distance between it is going to increase. So the real problem with it is that leap seconds are unpredictable. These are in milliseconds per day, how much extra. Your average crystal, such as this, is accurate to 1 microsecond a day. That's a millisecond a day. You get an earthquake. You get a bad season somewhere. There are so many reasons why it slows down and speeds up. Yeah. Going around the sun is actually far more accurate. So we're actually going to get the Earth's spin on its axis is actually going to get out of phase eventually to the number of times it goes around the sun. So this is the difference between the Gregorian calendar and the Julian calendar is that centuries are not leap seconds. So normally it's all years that are divisible by 4, leap years, I should say. The Julian calendar, the Gregorian calendar has it that centuries are not leap years. So the year 2000 was not a leap year. Still didn't stop. The other way around. I'm up here trying to think on my feet. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, and that's why you get these really weird things, such as some of the IBM mainframes that have their epoch in 1899, because they didn't want to work out that 1900 not being a leap year. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that's the basic thing. It will happen. It will have to be fixed. Basically, it's how many bugs we're going and crashes we're going to have along the way. We apparently don't have any astronomers. Last time we had quite a sizable astronomer population in the audience that were taking me on about this. So that's the talk. This entire talk. This entire talk is available on the Wayback Web Archive. There. There's about 50% extra slides that didn't make it. The entire script is available there. That's this thing. Have GPS, have NTP, have fun. Somebody, where are we? Where's your gift of a GPS? Somewhere. Should be here somewhere.